Buyers in the mid-size SUV segment should be a happy bunch. With so many options to choose from, car makers have been falling over themselves to stand out. For MG Motor India, which has always pitched itself as a tech leader, this means cramming the Astor full of features that would have been commonplace in the highest reaches of the luxury segment even a couple of years ago. But how is the Astor to drive? And do these features actually make a difference in the real world? The MG Astor is essentially the petrol-powered version of the MG ZS EV in its facelifted form. A 1.5-litre naturally aspirated petrol is the base engine option, while the range topper is this 1.3-litre turbo petrol paired with a 6-speed torque converter. The motor with its 140 PS is at par with its immediate rivals, but with 220 Nms at a slight torque disadvantage to the current segment norm. That said, this engine is a significant improvement from the Hector's turbo DCT powertrain, making for a much more coherent driving experience. Which means that the MG Astor feels quiet and refined while pottering through city traffic. However, compared to its European and Korean rivals, there is a touch more lag in the drivetrain, which can sometimes make for a bit more hesitant progress in city traffic. However, the 6-speed torque converter is quite intuitive and well timed with its shifts. And while the shifts themselves are smooth, they could have been a touch quicker to sort of give for a more cohesive experience. Now, the experience from behind the wheel improves once you've hit the open road and the engine has fully hit its stride. There are no drive modes, but then you don't miss them too much either with the nice general tune that MG has found for the engine and gearbox. And in any case, there is an S mode which sharpens up shifts to make acceleration steady if not brisk. So this means that merging into highways or overtakes aren't really a problem. And while doing this, the engine makes power in a steady, if a slightly subdued manner compared to its rivals, although there is quite a step up in performance past 3000 RPM. And in these situations, the cabin still remains relatively quiet and there's very little wind or tire noise coming in. Instead of drive modes, there are 3 steering modes on the MG Astor. These are well calibrated with a light and twirly feel from the urban setting, ramping up to quite a meaty heft in the dynamic mode. But we think most owners will prefer the normal setting, which finds a good middle ground. Now, the Astor is a reasonably comfortable car to spend time in. It'll cover smooth roads quite flat and small cracks or rough patches don't really pass into the cabin. Although like the Hector, we think the suspension has been damped a touch too firmly for our roads, which means that patched surfaces or sharp speed bumps, the vertical movement from these is transferred into the cabin a bit more than we would have liked. But in any case, this isn't too uncomfortable by itself, although it can get tiring over the course of a road trip. The MG will handle a winding section of road without surprises, even though there is a touch more body roll here than some other similarly priced rivals. The chassis has been tuned for the steady driving approach that most owners of the Astor will take. So even though the SUV doesn't like to be pushed too hard, a measured driving style makes the Astor change direction well, with body movements staying in check. The disc brakes all around are also competent enough to slow the Astor down without any drama. The Astor is the most affordable car in India with level 2 autonomous driving, and this is great news from a safety perspective. Plus, MG has also tuned this system in a way that it will benefit Astor users the most. So the system always works as is intended and is never too heavy-handed with its intrusions. Aside from some warnings and a slight resistance from wandering out of the lane, the system cuts off and asks for significant driver input to bring the Astor back in line. A good tactic considering most users will not have experienced this tech before and may not be ready for the more aggressive corrections that some of these systems make. However, we did notice that the system can sometimes not detect clearly marked lanes and on a sweeping curve may on occasion put in more steering input than necessary. Having said that, the lane keeping function does very well to center the Astor in its lane accurately, making constant small adjustments. The adaptive cruise control is also well judged. It picks up cars in front easily enough and will even read road signs to slow or speed up the Astor as needed. So if you happen to live in an area with well-marked roads or use major highways often, there's a genuine case to be made for choosing the Astor, given the amount of stress it dials out. To this end, the automatic emergency braking system picks up stray pedestrians or bikers cutting in your way consistently, but again leaves most of the actual braking to the driver. Aside from the tech, another big draw with the MG Astor is the sense of quality that MG has been able to achieve inside it. The layered dash layout looks contemporary, but the optional red and grey color scheme significantly enhances the feel of this space with the soft dash-top materials. MG has also found a good balance between the touchscreen interface and the physical toggle switches, although we think the plastics for these switches and around the lower half of the cabin could have felt a touch more substantial. There's a good view out from the front, with the edges of the bonnet clearly marked, but the lack of reach adjustment for the steering is a big miss that makes finding the perfect driving position more difficult than it needs to be, even with the powered driver's seat. The seats themselves could have been better contoured as well. The flat cushioning and limited under-thigh support can tire you out after long stints behind the wheel. The large windows and full-size panoramic sunroof means that the Astor's cabin feels pleasant from the second row too. But here as well, we would have liked a touch more contouring on the seats and better under-thigh support. Having said that, there's good legroom and the backrest angle is just right, with the bench being wide enough for 3 adults. The MG Astor has become the brand's most successful offering, and it comes as no surprise. While we would have liked a more resolved drivetrain and ride, with more of the smaller useful features still intact, the MG scores on fronts that would probably impact its buyers more directly. The ADAS is a genuinely useful addition, and the cabin makes the Astor feel far more expensive than it really is. Pair that with the sharp looks and the keen pricing, and the Astor is another strong contender in the mid-size SUV segment.